Oh, I
Hello
didn't know
and
you.
welcome to Real Time Recorded. Zeus, it's been a while since we've done one of these.
Yeah, a
A
few
great way
months,
to
right? I
start
think.
off the year.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Well, that's Happy New Year to you. So,
Happy
uh,
happy Real Time Recorded to you.
yeah,
Um, so it seemed like a interesting topic would be AI. Since I don't know, I've looked through a lot of the year end predictions from our colleagues, and AI seems to come up a lot. I I wrote about alpaca intelligence before, but it wasn't that popular of a topic. But apparently, a lot of people want to hear more about alpacas. Um, but
yeah. Well, certainly any event we show up at, it shows up, right? Like the year ended. It was a big topic at reInvent, even within the contact center track. Five Nine's got their analyst event slated already. I'm sure it's going to be a big topic there. Ring and 8x8 do as well. I'm sure it's going to be a big topic there. And so I think, David's the first technology for both collab and the contact center that actually can change the way we work, right? Like fundamentally. And I think one of the reasons why, when you look at, especially in the collab side, that market has become such a commodity is because we're not doing things that are a whole lot different than we did before. We're doing them perhaps a little bit, easier or whatever, but it didn't, fundamentally change the way we work. And I think one of the things we had talked about towards the end of the year is when you look at some of the features that are coming now, um, like the ones WebEx announced, the WebEx One, they actually, um, to me, it almost acts like having a real assistant, right? Like if you were, a super highly paid executive, and every meeting you went into, you'd have somebody whisper in your ear that you met this with this person last time. This is what you said, and this is what you talked about. But not everybody has that, right? And so the virtual assistants now, especially
it's
now with generative
Smithers
AI,
on The Simpsons, right? It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So not everybody has Smithers, but now it can do that, even to the point where in the demo they showed, where if you get up out of your desk for 10 minutes, it'll catch you up. Even a human assistant really wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think AI has given us the ability through natural language, right, to be much smarter and more engaged with our audience. And I think that's the sort of exciting thing about it is and it's interesting, the question about Copilot, right? Will people pay $30 a month? I think they will if the value is there, right? If it can save you, um, you know, even 4 hours a week of time, even a couple hours a week, then all of a sudden $30 a month doesn't really look like that big an expense item, right? So this is where the industry has a chance to
I
actually,
don't think that $30 is going to hold. In fact, I think they're already discounting it pretty heavily. But uh, but yes, they should charge more for it if people
yeah,
find value in it. So there will be a price that emerges out of that. And a lot of the AI offerings in our space, like Zoom, they're not charging more for it, and I don't know if that's going to hold long term either. I think this stuff's expensive, and it probably will end up getting some kind of a fee. It may not have a co-pilot fee. It may just be like the higher offering has these additional features. Now, I want to
well, that's the question
clarify.
is, right? How do they monetize? And this is a question we've posed to some of the vendors. I know for years we would always ask, when Rowan and Rosenberg were, uh, running the AI show there at 5 9, we'd always ask, what are you going to charge and what are you going to give away for free? And they didn't really know, right? And I still don't think they know. And this is the big question that I have. It's, if we're going to use AI to create more economic value for everyone, and I've seen estimates that it's going to create trillions of dollars of economic value, then some of it should be chargeable. But I don't think our industry really knows what is chargeable and what isn't.
Nor has it really ever, I guess. But well, I guess that's not true. But now that we're moving more towards software delivered features, that's becoming all much more negotiable. But I wanted to clarify, because 2023 was really all about generative AI, but really, particularly in the contact center, AI, forget generative AI, AI has been the primary source of innovation for the past several years, probably 5 years, maybe 4 years or so. And the contact center is being dramatically remade with AI, and then last year was all about generative AI, and the conversation went on to steroids. That's not going to change because it hasn't changed for several years. I don't believe generative AI is as disruptive as many of us believed maybe 9 months ago. Coming out of Enterprise Connected seemed really like it was, and we pretty much talked about it all year. But it seems to have landed, at least in the contact center and in UC, pretty much with the same basic offerings that things like self-service and agent assist, and also I'll call it agent support, where it maybe does the documentation, our post-call documentation. But I would describe all of these as incremental improvements, not the disruptive improvements that I think many of us were expecting. You agree with that?
Um, yeah, but I think we're pretty early in the cycle. The thing that I like about what generative AI brings is the ability to use natural language, right? Which we didn't have before. And so at reInvent, one of the sessions I attended was they took a handful of press and analysts out to the TPC Summerlin, and where they were doing a pro-am. And the PGA actually demonstrated how they're thinking about using generative AI. And when I first saw it, they were asking the questions like, who hit the longest drive at the Shriners Championship in 2023, things like that. That information's already there, right? And so when it returns it, you think, well, I mean, that info was there. But prior to that, you would have actually needed somebody to understand how to ask the question, what the machine would understand and what it didn't understand. And so now you can do everything through natural language. And so to me, that's the benefit that generative AI brings. I talked to the person that owns the QuickSight product at AWS too. And it's funny because Amazon Q actually was what QuickSight called their assistant first. And then they're kind of proud of the fact that it grew up from there. But before Q, you would need an actual data scientist to look through the QuickSight data and figure out what it means. Now you do it through natural language, right? So it democratizes the usability of AI.
Except where it doesn't. That's the problem. It does the way you describe it if that data is there. But if the problem is, if the data is not there, you're going to get a factually sounding correct answer, even though it's not right. And that's and so I've never had any. I can't recall in the past 30 years of any technology that we've so heavily talked about guardrails. In fact, guardrails never comes up in tech conversations, right? It's this one topic. It's one topic of generative AI because it generates bullshit, and because it has this propensity to generate bullshit. Not only does it lie, but it lies authoritatively. It'll answer your question: who has the longest drive? With incredible amount of detail. And really, it's hard to tell that it's making it up, and because of that, it's really limited to what we can do with it.
Yes, well, this is where I think the work needs to be done on the data side, right? If you remember at the NICE conference, I asked both their customers that, right, like how they're thinking about rationalizing the data down, because if you're going to be looking at customer journey data and things like that, you need all the data and you need to be accurate. And most companies don't really do a very good job. Thank you, Salesforce, right, of having good customer data. They both echoed that they're trying to figure out a way to have all their data located in one place and have it be more accurate. But that to me, that's not a generative AI problem. That's a data problem, right? And I do think the early use cases, Dave, you'll see them used on very, very narrow use cases on closed data sets. And I think that'll protect customers to some degree. Even, the PGA example I gave you, they said the reason it's still in beta is because they're not sure that the data is all correct, right? And so they need to go do some work and, make sure their data sets are,
that's going to be the big challenge. I mean, it's hard enough in a contact center where you've actually got knowledge bases, but I think it's going to be the big challenge with Copilot when we're trying to get this down to the desktop, because what Microsoft is trying to do is they're trying to scan all the drives you have access to get information. And most people have a ton of garbage in their shared drives and personal drives. And it's garbage that you don't think of as garbage. It might be old proposals that never happened, or it may be a proposal that got changed and like that. And so when Copilot goes off and finds this data for answers to your questions, it's based on totally obsolete information. So I think in 24, and I should hope in 24, and we've already seen this maybe a little bit with Nice. Um, there's going to be a big shift. In 23, the conversation was all about AI. But I think what we're coming to the realization is that it's hard to differentiate on AI. And the way you differentiate is talking about the data. The first rule of AI is not to talk about AI, but to talk about the data that you use with the AI. And that's why I mentioned Nice. I mean, Nice talks a lot about understanding intents. And they've built a business around the intent modeling, and they have a lot of expertise around this. And so I believe that the conversation is going to have to shift much more to the data, and data is hard. We have a lot of crappy data. We have a lot of unstructured data, and the beauty of generative AI is you don't need to have it structured, but it still has to be cleaned. And I think that's going to be the challenge of or let me rephrase that. It's going to be the opportunity for the channel, because they're not going to be delivering the AI. AI is going to come from, some huge company, but they're going to be delivering the skills and techniques to make it usable.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, and that's why I think again some of the early use cases will be you'll have, like I said, the PGA will have their own, virtual interface for fans and things that mines only their data, right? But they will control the data, and they'll own it turnkey, right? And similarly, I think you'll see organizations, Bloomberg, Dow Jones, LexisNexis, things like that. All these companies that deal in data are going to have to, figure out a way of, keeping that data curated and private. It's not it doesn't give us access to all our information, but I think it gives us access to the information we need for that particular use case.
Well, that touches on another subject about the barriers to entry. And I've been writing about this with the contact center. I did that research note last week, but about does CCaaS matter anymore? And the point of that paper was to say that even the CCaaS providers don't really talk about CCaaS anymore. No one's really talking about the benefits of evergreen software or OpEx models or the software as a service anymore. But what the contact center conversation has shifted to, even by the CCaaS providers, has really shifted to AI and digital channels. And that's all that matters. Well, that's great. And a lot of CCaaS providers that we follow very closely have made that shift, and the way they signal that often is we're using the term CX now instead of CCaaS, and they're talking a lot more about the data and a lot more about their AI and a lot more about digital channels. So that's great. However, the other side of that coin is that the barriers to entry, which used to be things like ACD know-how and calling know-how and hardware and even endpoints, phones, those are all disappearing as barriers to entry. And so we're seeing totally new kinds of companies. A good example is Sprinkler, for example, which does not have a telecom history or background, but has a strong digital channel background. And so they're now in the CCaaS space, and other companies are coming in that CCaaS space. So when you talk about these companies like LexisNexis, if the conversation is really shifting to all about data, who are the data repositories? CRM companies, ERP companies, who are the data, and are they going to become the contact center? Or does the contact center disappear? Or what happens to this space? I mean, we've always kind of, even Gartner in their Magic Quadrant, they require to be in that Magic Quadrant for CCaaS, 50% of your revenue has to come from inbound calling. Is that even a metric that we care about anymore in the modern contact center? And if it isn't, what is the right metrics that we're going to care about? And I think that second question is the harder part of that because I don't think we care about inbound voice as much. But how do we define this space?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's not like that metric certainly needs to change, because the more AI based these contact centers become, the more digital driven it'll become, right? In fact, you would argue, to be a leader, you'd almost want to see that number shift, right? And only, maybe 25% of your calls come from inbound voice, if if you do
Or
it right.
none.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
You know
so that's what Frontier has
Yeah.
done, right? Frontier did that with Cognigy of all companies, right? So Frontier claims, and they've said this publicly. This is their words, that they got rid of inbound voice and went strictly digital channels, and they're using Cognigy for a lot of the automation and AI, and they say that their CSAT scores have improved. Um, and so again, I don't think of Cognigy necessarily as a contact center replacement, but maybe it is.
Yeah, well, the guy, Nigel, that we met at the Bayfront event, or Bayfront, at GITEX, the Avaya customer.
Oh yes.
Yeah, yeah. He said almost all his inbound. Now they support gaming and gambling, but he said almost all their interactions come in through a digital channel, right? So I don't know. He's just as much a contact center as anybody else, but his use case wouldn't really qualify for the way Gartner defines it, right? But they've built out such sophistication on the chat side that they don't really need the calling. So that's not to say in some verticals calling is not going to exist, but I do think that that metric probably needs to change from.
So what do you think? So 2023 was all about the excitement around generative AI. There was a lot of talk about how generative AI is going to replace agents. I don't think that's going to happen. And so, what do you think we're going to in the near term future with AI? Do you think it's going to be more of what we're seeing now, or do you think we're going to see different things?
Oh no, I do think that, to your point, we need to start seeing more discussion around data, though, and how the CCAS vendors, if that's the term you want to use, are helping customers rationalize that, because that's something I've been asking the vendors for a while. Is that everybody talks about customer journey, everybody talks about end to end customer experience, but the reality is there's no vendor out there that actually looks across the customer journey, and so perhaps this year, what we should look for is a lot of partnerships, right? You look at a company like Adobe that plays very much at the front end. Perhaps there should be more CCAS partnerships with them, and not just in name only, right? Because they all partner, but actually at a data level where they're integrating customer data to the point where, customers are able to apply AI across the entire journey. Because I think without that, what we're going to get is a bunch of, kind of fragmented views of what's going on with the customer. That doesn't really help anybody. So,
Yeah, I think I've been more cognizant of when I have to call a customer service number, and I've also been a little more taking more initiative on my own to see if I can solve it on my own before I called. And I'm finding that when I'm calling a contact center, I cannot solve it on my own. I need a human. And their insistence on throwing even a generative AI bot at me to solve my problems for faster, better service is irritating. I don't think that I don't think agents are in any danger by generative AI at all. And it's interesting when Sam Altman, in an interview maybe about 6 months ago, the CEO of and the old and the new CEO of OpenAI,
yeah.
He made a comment that this will probably displace customer service representatives faster than any other industry. I think he's dead wrong on that. I think that generative AI is going to be very disruptive, particularly around coding. I think we're going to see. In fact, Microsoft's got millions of users already on what's it called, GitHub,
Yeah.
using generative AI for coding. and paying for it, paid users using that. I think we're going to see a lot more disruption outside of customer service with generative AI. I think the generative AI in customer service is going to go down to a dull roar, as they say. It's important. It's another milestone. I don't want to say it's not important. I mean, it's another milestone. Kasparov losing to Big Blue in 1990, whatever it was. That was a milestone as well. There's been lots of milestones in AI that have been really important, and we continue to progress. But I don't think it's going to be that disruptive play that people were expecting earlier this year. I think the innovations in customer service with AI are probably going to be much more incremental for the next few years. But a lot of people disagree. A lot of people think we're just on the cusp of huge changes.
Oh, I think at the end of the day, the automation capabilities and self-service will need less agents. I'm not saying the agents won't exist. I do think the agents that remain will wind up doing calls that are longer and more important. And I do think the way you measure contact center effectiveness needs to change, because it's not, call handle time and things like that anymore. I actually think that we need to start measuring things like, I do think it'll reduce even the use of AI will reduce agent churn, right? Because you'll have better, more skilled agents and things. And so I think that's one of the interesting things to think about this year is how does a company measure the effectiveness of their AI? Because it's not in traditional contact center metrics. So.
I think that's a great point, but I don't have a good answer for that one either. We've always known that if we add more agents, we can improve CSAT, customer satisfaction. It may not improve agent satisfaction. We can always improve customer satisfaction with more agents. We've always had bots and self-service and web pages and other channels available in an attempt to reduce the number of agents. And so is that we can maintain CSAT with the same number of agents? That can we improve CSAT with less agents? I don't know the answer. I don't even know what we're looking for with
I actually think if you used some of the new, like NICE has their AI inferred CSAT, I don't think companies really know what their CSAT is, Dave, because the way you do CSAT today is you send it a survey and it's only the really happy or the really upset.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people know that the bonuses for these folks is tied, so it's like Uber. Do you ever not give a 5 to your Uber driver? Right. But if there was something listening in the car or monitoring the car and they knew the driver braked hard a few times, they might not give the driver a 5 if it was inferred. Right. So I think it's possible that if you used something like, the NICE AI inferred CSAT, you could actually see your CSAT initially go down, but that would become your benchmark. Right. And then you could look to improve it from there. Because I really don't think companies have any idea what their CSAT is right now.
So let's go ahead and wrap this up. We've gotten 25 minutes here. So let's you want to throw out any words of wisdom here? I'm going to suggest that I think the companies to watch in this space are probably NICE and Five9. They're probably ahead of the pack. You mentioned Amazon. They're a tricky one because the Amazon's really, you got to drink the Kool-Aid. You got to go all in on AWS, and that may not be for everybody, but it is for a lot.
If you're an AWS customer, though, there's no reason to not use Connect. I was very skeptical of them having success in contact center initially, but if you are an AWS customer and you use their tools, it's a good solution now. So they've come a long way.
That's a big if, though, because what you're saying is, and I mostly agree with that, but what you're saying is that if you have the development skills in house to use their tools, because their tools are indeed kind of a Twilio model, you really got to plug and play and develop it yourself, where the other vendors have, you can become a certified admin or a certified pro or in those products. It's harder to do in the Amazon space.
Yeah, that's not true anymore, though. Their product is pretty turnkey. That's one of the myths. In fact, I thought about writing a post on myths of of Amazon Connect. I think it's a more full feature product than people realize now. So, but but again, I think they're kind of they're not the most well known, like Nice and Five9 certainly have bigger brands. And so, but I think they're kind of an interesting company to watch. And the other one that I think is interesting to watch is WebEx. They finally finished the product, right? They've got a lot of really interesting features that they brought over from WebEx, like their even their background noise removal really is better than other people's background noise removal. I actually had a video I recorded at a trade show, and I thought there was a little too much background noise, so I ran it through WebEx and I turned on my voice, the my voice feature, and you literally could hear nothing but my voice. And it was and to that I was talking to Javed about it. And I said, your background noise removal is too good here, because now the video looks right. It just looks unnatural because it's just me talking and you can see people move around. There's no background noise. But in a contact center scenario where that agent's working from home, that's ideally what you want, right? So
yeah, well, it goes back to what I was saying a little earlier about all that really matters in contact center now is AI and digital channels. And WebEx has a pretty good repository of AI technology. They've acquired some, they developed some, and pretty good with their acquisition of IMI Mobile. They have a very strong digital capability, and so that's basically my general advice to any prospect, any customer right now, is when you're looking at the contact center solution, you need to be focusing on AI and evaluating the AI and digital capabilities of the providers and how well they can put these to use for you.
And I'm really curious to see how Zoom does this year, because from everything I've heard internally at Zoom, they are not just all in on contact center, but they're going to treat contact center this year like they treated Zoom Phone last year, where it is kind of the big initiative that, and I from what I've heard, everything that group does now rolls up directly to Eric, right? So
I've been very impressed with Zoom. What do they call it? Zoom AI. What's the word they use? AI assistant. It's not. It doesn't seem right because it's I'm thinking the acronym Zoom AI something. I don't think it's A at the end, but called Companion.
AI Companion.
And I've been very impressed with it. And I've actually steered a few meetings away from competitive meetings platform to Zoom because I wanted that Zoom AI Companion to take notes for me. And now it's available in WebEx as well. And I think Microsoft's finally rolling it out. The problem is these companions only work for the customer. So if I invite you to a meeting, I'm going to get all these benefits and I can share them with you, but you don't get the benefits necessarily. And so we're going to be fighting over, no, I want to host the meeting. No, I want to host the meeting. And so, but anyway.
If you're both a customer, though, that doesn't work cross-platform, I guess not, right?
I don't believe, even if you're a paid customer and you have the features, I don't believe anyone has made it so that it works if you're not the host. But I'm sure that will come soon. But anyway, we're at the half-hour mark. We didn't get any questions on this one, so but that's just as well because I find you fascinating and interesting all by yourself. So thanks for watching, and we'll try to do a few more of these more regularly this year. Very good. Thank you.
Happy New Year.